Hello, friends, and you are my friend. Welcome to Plant vs. Canelo, the Super Middleweight contest this Saturday. We look at it with a preview. I'm, of course, the governor, joined by the TKO expert, Matthew Phillips. Matt, welcome.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. Another boxing special. Looking forward to this one.
It's going to be fireworks, hopefully. Bit like what I've got outside my window right now.
Well, yeah, this is, of course, for those that perhaps do not know, there is a division outside the heavyweight. For me, sometimes I'm saying that more for myself because I sometimes forget that a little bit myself. But this is the undisputed unified super middleweight. You got Canelo, who's a feisty character, and Plant. They've had fireworks at the weigh-in, at the press conference. If you've not seen that yet, I suggest doing so. That itself, Matt, created about 1 million talking points.
Well, they had that. Yeah, it was like to introduce the fight. I can't remember how long ago it was now. Maybe about 6 weeks ago, maybe. And at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Yeah, it was 6 weeks ago. Yeah.
And they ended up doing did their little face-to-face, squared on. It was a bit of a pushing match, and Canelo gave a little left hook to Plant, knocked his shades off, and gave him a cut just underneath his underneath his right eye. Which is always a promoter's nightmare, because then would that have hampered his sparring or anything, or even?
Well, it would have done, wouldn't it? Because you can't, you would have had to have wear a full protected headgear, which of course then it's like when it's like playing football with your left foot, not your right foot. If you're right footed, you got to get used to sparring with it, and then it comes off, and you suddenly got to get used to sparring without it, and it's really difficult for boxers, that particularly.
It might have hampered his progress a little bit, but he, like Plant was saying, it's just a graze, I'm good. But you never really know what happens behind the closed doors of a training camp in boxing. But it wasn't a good look anyway, because the fight could have easily been cancelled there and then.
It wasn't. For those that perhaps didn't watch, I suggest going and watch it. But it was two boxers coming together, sparring as they do, and they're both known for a little bit of trash talking. And then something sort of kicks it off. You get a shove from Canelo, an open palm slap from Plant, and then, he walks into a bit of the Canelo duck dive swipe, and a preview maybe for the weekend. But as I said at the top of the show, Matt, this is a division that perhaps not many people, if they're only casual boxing fans, would be aware of or in tune with. So why is this such a big fight for the sport of boxing?
Yeah, well, it's probably a division where you would know a lot of the names that are featured in it, but you may have not had too much focus on the actual division. So Carl Froch has been in there, Calzaghe's been in there, Eubank, Ben, Michael Watson, they've all been super middleweights. And of course, it was created in the mid to late 80s, really, as a kind of a bridging weight between fighters that wanted to go from middle to light heavy. So they created the super middleweight. And there's never been an undisputed champion in the super middleweight division in that whole time during what we call the four belt era. So WBC, WBA, WBO, and the IBF. Now, Calzaghe held all those belts at one time, but at different times. So he held 3 of those, and he had vacated the IBF. So he's probably the nearest we've ever got to an undisputed champion. But tomorrow night we will see it. It happens rarely. I mean, I think the only undisputed champion at the moment is actually from British Shores, Scotland's Josh Taylor, who's the junior welterweight undisputed champion. I think it's a good thing, because I'm one of these purists that always thinks there should just be one division. In every division, we should just have one champion. And a lot of people over the years have taken to the Ring magazine in the States, and also the Ring magazine belt is on the line as well tomorrow. So they're a magazine that have their own belts. And a lot of people would view their rankings, their ratings, and whoever the champion is in the Ring magazine ratings as the ultimate champion, of which Canelo is in this instance. But yeah, it's going to be good.
It's going to be good. And it's funny you should mention Carl Froch, obviously, because he made the news this week a little bit by saying in his prime, he'd have been too much for Canelo. Hypothetically, what do you make of Mr. Froch's comments there?
I like how Carl still has this sort of like fire in his belly when his opponents are, it's a mark of a true champion, isn't it? He's been retired for X amount of years and still thinks he could knock them out.
But boxers do, isn't it? It's, you got to have that chip, that edge, that fire. But could he have done? Because I the only times I'm not off. Boxing is one of those things where I tend to go by the press conference, and I was badly wrong. I was badly burned by Carl Froch's George Groves. I thought George Groves was in Carl's head.
I think he was. I mean, look, he floored him in the first round, didn't it? That was a super middleweight fight, of course.
And I thought St. George was gonna win, and he didn't.
Yeah.
Not only once, but twice.
Yeah.
So I've learned not to bet against Carl Froch. But would you, hypothetically, if that was a fight to happen in both their primes? Because Canelo himself, if you've not seen him, he's a small guy that can pack a hell of a punch. He is like a pit bull.
Yeah.
0 to 90 in 1 second flat. He's scary. He's intense. Could he have beaten Carl Froch, or would Carl Froch have
I think he would have beaten. I think he probably would have beaten Froch. You do. I mean, look, Froch lost to Kessler, and then he beat him in the rematch. He got well beaten by Andre Ward. I think who's got something to do with Caleb Plant's corner tomorrow night. He got well beaten by Andre Ward. So I think Froch was a really good champion, but I feel like probably Canelo was just a little bit more elite than him.
Well, tell the people at home about Canelo then. How has he found himself in this position, pound for pound?
Well, I mean, look, Canelo's a funny one. I can remember seeing him on the undercard of maybe one of the Ricky Hatton fights, and he got rocked by a journeyman, Jose Cotto, who was a journeyman brother of Miguel Cotto, who actually Canelo would go on and beat at middleweight. And he got rocked. It's the only time I've ever seen him rocked. And this was, he was viewed as a novice at this point, but he'd had 30 plus fights. He turned pro when he was 15. So he's been a pro. He's 31 now. So he's been a pro for 16 years. So he's a unique character in every way. He's unique. He's a red-headed Mexican. He's got a complexion of someone from Glasgow rather than Guadalajara.
That's
which
true.
Is where he's from. And tomorrow night is his 60th fight, which he's only lost once to Floyd Mayweather. And even then, we'll come to this in a minute. There's cards. Even one of the cards gave him a draw in that fight, which he was well beaten in. And he's had 2 draws. I would argue that he put in and he's won titles across 4 divisions. So junior middleweight, super middle. He's also gone up to light heavyweight and beaten Kovalev, albeit an aging Kovalev, an absolute ferocious hitter. Wasn't called the Crusher for nothing. So he went up there and beat him. Like you say, he's only 5'8". He's only a little bit taller than me. But like you say, stocky, and he just comes forward. He's
even in defence, he's on the attack.
Yeah, I mean, look. Billy Joe Saunders, a slick boxer. He was only really in the fight with him for a couple of rounds. I thought Billy Joe would stand a good chance with him, but at the end of the day, one shot actually finished that fight, and it broke Billy Joe's orbital bone around his eye socket. Game over, one punch.
But the thing with Canelo is, he not only has that power, he has what Ben says here. Is technically, his combination punching is so good. Like he'll work you with the body, so you think, or he'll feint you with the left, so you go to defend the left, and before you've even thought about defending the left, there's a right hook coming, and you're on the ground. Yeah, you're done. Game is over. He's a really possibly preparing for the show. I've been watching a lot of his boxing matches, and he's a very impressive fighter.
He's had some ferocious knockouts. I mean, Amir Khan being one.
Yeah, Amir Khan. Jesus wept.
Yeah, you would argue that Amir shouldn't mean anywhere near middleweight, really. But I mean, again, he's a game fighter, Amir, and decided he wanted to go up there. I actually think he did all right until he walked into that right hand, and it was game over, wasn't it?
It was. But it is a 2-man race. So talk to us about Caleb Plant, who have also got. We'll get into it a little bit later on, but he's not exactly a household name. Took me a while to sort of do some research on him and really drill into what he brings. So what does he bring to the party tomorrow on Saturday?
Well, so Caleb holds the IBF version of the super middleweight title, which means Canelo's got the WC, WBO, WBA version. And he won that title off, no one can ever say this guy's surname, Jose Uzcategui, I think he's Colombian. That was in January 2019, and he won that on points. And he's had 3 defenses since. So he brings I would say he's actually a very similar fighter to Billy Joe in actual fact.
Yeah.
He's got a good defense. There's question marks around his chin, but I can't recall him ever going down. He might have done in some of his earlier fights. He's 21-0 with 12 knockouts. So he's not bringing a lot of power to the table. So when you consider that Gennady Golovkin, one of the all-time greats, will go into the Hall of Fame, couldn't floor Canelo in 2 fights, and Canelo walked through his punches. This is the guy who broke Matt Macklин's ribs in 1 fight, and Canelo walked like I was bloody punching him. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
You have to think that Caleb probably isn't going to win by stoppage. So he's going to have to. He's got a very good jab, and he throws it from quite low. He's renowned for like throwing his jab from around his waist, and he can pop it pretty good. And we've seen in the past that Canelo does struggle a little bit with fighters that have got a good jab and can tee him up. Probably the biggest one was when he fought when Canelo fought Erislandy Lara, a Colombian American. And a lot of people thought Canelo lost that fight. And he won it on a split decision. But Lara, even though he was southpaw, so he brought a little bit of a different look. And Caleb is orthodox. But he was a southpaw, and he really gave Canelo problems. He was putting that jab in 1, 2, 3, and then teeing it up for another shot. And Canelo struggled with that. And he struggled a little bit with that same kind of style against Kovalev up at light heavy, albeit, half a stone heavier. Kovalev certainly worked his jab, and Canelo struggled with that. It was only, a lot of people had Kovalev winning that, and it was only 11th round knockout that Canelo won it. And of course, Mayweather worked the jab and made it difficult for Canelo to hit him, and he ended up outpointing him. So that would suggest to me that there's a blueprint there for Caleb in order to use that jab and try and win the fight on points, because you ain't going to knock him out. Don't put any money on Caleb by knockout.
Well, no. I think that would be fool's money. I mean, it might happen. Of course, it's boxing. Anything can happen. One stray punch, and careers often change courses forever. But technically, Caleb Plant is very good.
Yeah.
Technically, he's got the tools to do an upset.
He's got the tools there, but whether or not he can, in terms of boxing, he hasn't got the tools for a knockout. He hasn't got the power for that, I don't think.
Although you're training him, if you're his coach, if you're in his corner, what is your blueprint for Caleb Plant on Saturday? What are you telling him? What's the blueprint?
The Lara fight, you watch Mayweather back, you watch Kovalev. Just get behind that jab and try and get Canelo swinging and missing. Basically, is the key, which is what Mayweather was a master at doing. He would hit you and not get hit.
He would.
Didn't make for great fights, particularly. People would be pumped for a Mayweather fight versus Canelo, and you'd be, it was so one-sided, you'd be falling asleep. But I mean, that probably is the only way that I think Caleb probably is gonna win it. He is pretty good at the combo shot. So once he does tee that jab up, 1, 2, 3, and he'll get into the pocket. He's got a very good uppercut. He's got an uppercut that turns into a hook with the left hand. That could be troublesome. But I just don't see, if Golovkin in 24 rounds can't get through Canelo, I'm pretty certain Caleb can't. But yeah, he's going to have to try and win it on points, I think. But this brings me to another thing. The Vegas judges, this is a big thing with Canelo. You sometimes just, you'd have to send him to bloody hospital, I think, to get the decision. A lot of people think Caleb will be starting at, with Canelo already having 120 points on the card.
Wow.
It's such a difficult
thing. Can't
thing.
be that bad, surely.
Like I say, a lot of people thought Lara would beat him, and he got the decision. A lot of people thought Amir Khan was beating him, and when he actually saw the cards, hadn't actually won a round. So
this reminds me a little bit of the Klitschko Fury fight when Fury went to Dusseldorf, and everyone thought, you've got to knock Klitschko out to win because you won't get the points decision. But obviously Fury did, because he did technically strip, tear him apart and remove him layer by layer. Is that what Plant's got to do then? If you're not going to knock him out, which I don't think he's going to, you've got to really take him apart layer by layer, round by round, and make it unequivocal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got to make it like Mayweather did. No one watching that fight thought Canelo had won it, albeit, like I say, one of the judges gave him a draw. And even Canelo, Canelo's a great sportsman. You can watch some of the, even though we're going back eight or so years here, you can see him in the ring talking in Spanish. No way have I got, a draw out of this fight, or however it is.
Is it a mind game thing? Can you get into the mindset of Canelo and make him force an error out of him?
I certainly think Caleb's tried that in terms of, like you say, that's probably what prompted the fight in the first place on the stage at Beverly Hills, was the fact that, he may have made reference to the fact that Canelo was found guilty of PED, performance-enhancing drugs intake, albeit they said it was through contaminated meat, which is a very big problem for Mexican fighters. They've had to change some of the drug testing in Mexico because Mexican meat has got some of these chemicals in there. So, I think probably Caleb was probably getting into his head a little bit and saying, you're the one. I've always tested clean. You're the one that came out of one of the fights with a dirty record there. But I just, it's so difficult for Caleb. He's just going to have to fight it round by round and just have Canelo swinging and missing, and he's scoring the shots on that jab or getting inside the pocket and scoring with the combos. So you make like Mayweather would do. He was never going to knock Canelo out, but he watched that fight and thought there's only one winner here.
Yeah, you did. Tell me, because it's on BT Sport or BT Box Office rather.
Yeah.
I think it's $14.95. Is that right?
20 quid.
Memory, 20 quid.
1995.
Of course it is. Most things are these days.
Yeah.
For those that are watching, perhaps at home right now, for those that will watch it back more on catch up, if they're umming, they're ahhing, and they're not quite sure, why should they purchase this fight? What's your
I would always, this is a live opponent for Canelo.
Yeah.
Caleb was actually said on record in some of the boxing media this week, a lot of people just turn up with their belts and say, I'm fighting Canelo, here's my belt. Callum Smith did that a little bit. He had all the attributes, I thought, to trouble Canelo in terms of height, and he was undefeated and he had a good knockout record, beating George Groves, we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Didn't really win a round against Canelo, right? So I think Caleb's going to be a live opponent. Caleb does come with history in terms of, and a tragic history as well in terms of his life story. I mean, it's one of these things we talk about, the Tyson Fury story being a film. This could be a film. He was brought up in Ashland City, which is on the periphery of Nashville in Tennessee, in a trailer park. So he came from very humble beginnings. His mum was shot by police during an altercation that she had with them with a knife. So she was killed there. And then tragically, his daughter, Aaliyah, was born with complications and had brain damage. And they had to switch the life support machine off, tragically, at 20 months. So he's always fighting for their memory.
Wow.
So, he brings that backstory with him, that's determination, confidence. He always said, I would, for my daughter, I would be a world champion one day. And he's made it. He's got the IBF belt. And so that'll be in the back of his head in terms of, I want to now up it and become the first undisputed champion in the super middleweight era. So he's a dangerous guy. Like I say, he's going to have determination. He's not going to go there and just lie down for Canelo like a lot of opponents have done. But just unfortunately for him, I don't think he's quite got enough in the tank to really trouble him power-wise. I certainly think he can trouble him with his technical expertise, but that's easier said than done. Once you've got Canelo marching towards you, cutting that ring down, like you say, wheeling in those body shots. It goes back to what we said in the Fury show. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, isn't it?
Plants will have to turn that jab into a power jab because Canelo will just walk through it.
It's going to have to make him respect him, absolutely, yeah. Which is what you would get from, which I feel like Lara did. Erislandy Lara did do that, and I think Kovalev did do that. Of course, Mayweather did that. Using that jab to tee up your own shots and get into the pocket, is designed to take away the attributes that Canelo will have. So we will have to see whether or not he can do it.
Well, as we round up, let's give the people where your money line is going. If you were going to put a cheeky £1.50 on the betting books this weekend, where would it go? Who's winning in what round? If it's round or is it points?
Yeah, I don't think you can look past Canelo really. I do feel like probably it's going to be a very similar fight, probably to the Billy Joe one, and Canelo eventually, he started off quite well. Billy, middle rounds started going towards Canelo, and then Billy had a little bit of success, but then that one shot, I think it was the 8th round, finished it completely, and Billy quit on his stall. He had to. He'd have broken orbital bone, might have lost his sight. So I would say probably anywhere between 6 to 8 rounds is probably. Okay. I think you could probably get a spread there, in terms of a knockout in those rounds or stoppage. Yeah, 6 to 8, I would say for Canelo.
I'm gonna go with Caleb Plant.
Well, you're gonna go points.
I'm gonna go points. Yeah, or a late round stoppage in the later rounds.
Wow.
Like last round. I see Canelo. He intrigues the piss out of me.
You'll get big odds. You'll get big odds on those.
As a fighter, he's really tenacious and aggressive, and I like that.
He's great for boxing.
Caleb Plant, I just think people are overlooking him. He's a technician. He can bring something to this fight that people perhaps just aren't overlooking. And I think that the press conference would have served as a little bit of a wake-up call if he's coming in a little bit, thinking it's going to be one way or the other. Because that was very good from Canelo. The slip, the slide, the tap. That's in a real ring with fucking great gloves on. You're on a canvas. That could have been a little bit of a wake-up call. That could be the jolt he needs. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into backing Plant.
Well, you never know with the jab. He could catch Canelo there. He could cut him. He could close an eye. You saw how much you saw what the damage Usyk did to Joshua just using getting behind the jab a little bit. You never know.
You never know in boxing. One punch and the careers change for an instant. Yeah, I'm gonna go Plant.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Plant.
So you thinking points is what you.
Give me points. Give me points. Give me points. I don't think you got the power to knock him out.
I think probably the smart bet, like I say, is between 6 to 8. You probably won't get very good odds on those because I think a lot of bookies will think that's a foregone conclusion. But
I wouldn't be surprised if Canelo wins it. Don't get me wrong, none whatsoever. But
Canelo is great for boxing. He's an old school character. I mean, his record's unbelievable. I mean, he's fought. This will be his 4th fight in 12 months.
Yeah,
Mayweather only used to fight twice a year, and always on Mexican holidays, Cinco de Mayo, which is the 5th of May, and in September. So Canelo's taking those dates over, and then some. I mean, there's some great fights going forward. If Canelo wins, he could go up to light heavy again, and fight maybe someone like Bivol or Arthur Beterbiev, who are real heavy hitters. Now Canelo would find himself in a real big fight now, up at light heavy. We could stay around super middle and fight Golovkin again. I feel like there should be a 3rd fight there because I thought Golovkin won their first one. He could fight one of the Charlos. David Benavidez is probably 2nd in the ring rankings, undefeated. So there's some good fights. There's some good fights there. So we'll see. We'll see how it all pans out. Again, we'll see how the dice lay Sunday morning.
Looking forward to seeing how it all falls. This has been the Talking Boxing TKO Knockout Show. Here's Matt Phillips. Leave a comment when you watch this back in the comment section. Let us know who you feel will take the belt come Saturday night. But until next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you all on the other day.